It's okay to start.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll be the only one that starts on the dot, so we'll do that. We're Americans here. I'm dual, so I can do that, whichever way it flows. Okay, dokes. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, good morning, Al.
Hey, good morning, Anne. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, mainly from CMU will be signing in a few minutes, in a few seconds.
In a few seconds. Okay, so your group is, you brought in the whole gang from Bukidnon. Perfect.
Yeah.
And people from UPLB just said, hi, good morning to you. Also, UPLB. Magandang umaga, bayan. I can be an announcer, actually, if I wanted to. Oh, also Louis is on. Okay, Louis, you can unmute and already and say hello to the group. But okay, I think we'll start, guys. Okay. So good morning. This is the 10.3 parallel session on R&D commercialization and technopreneurship. So today we have a very good roster of speakers, both from the US as well as from Australia and the Philippines, of course. And out of the 5 companies, there are 2 that are local. And then there's 3 support groups, mainly academe, represented by UP System, Louis Sison, and DOS TP Sherd. And last but not the least, my group in with Richard Abendan of US Aid Stride as part of the S&T ecosystem for technopreneurship and R&D commercialization in the Philippines. So I think without too much introduction, you just had been introduced to Carlito Lebrilla last Tuesday, I think, or yesterday. Yes, Carlito is a professor at UC Davis. He's the $6 million man, I call him, because of his $6 million MS equipment in his lab, which I've been to. But he's done so much work on sugar structures and for food and nutrition. I still remember his discovery on bifida, the mother's milk bacteria that helps our babies digest their mother's milk. And I think today he's going to talk about exactly the translation of research in his lab moving to commercialization in his various efforts, including bifida. So I think with that very short introduction, by the way, Carlito is the current board of directors chairman of PAASE, and he's been very helpful in getting us all organized and active. And so I always like the leader to lead by example. So clearly he's doing that today. So with that introduction, I think I'll ask Carlito to begin his presentation. Carlito? Carlito,
yeah,
can you share
thank
your...
you, Al.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a little bit of a pause, so I hope I'm coming through clearly to you.
Yes,
Okay,
I can
good.
see your screen now, and you're a little person on the corner.
Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna talk to you about my experiences in starting companies. You know, when I first started my my job at UC Davis, long time ago now, I never thought I would be starting company. I thought it would just be, I would be a scientist, an academic, and that's all, and new discoveries, and I thought starting companies just wasn't in my bag. But now today, there's a lot of people doing starting companies, and it's now a lot more easier to start them, and there's a lot less resistance towards it. So I'm going to give you my experience. These are the companies that I've been involved with. Most of them. There's a couple more, but this sort of represents all that that I'm going to talk about today. So this Glycometrics is a company that was developed it was set up to develop biomarkers for cancer. We founded this in 2005, and I had to dissolve it in 2015. But it was a brand new concept on looking at biomarkers from blood related to post-translational modification. And this is a sort of my learning company, and I'll show you why that is. Another company we started in 2013 is called Evolve Biosystems. This is the most successful so far. This has nearly $100 million in VC funding. It has 50 employees, and you can get the product commercially now. In 2018, we founded a company that was similar to Glycometrics called Interven, but with much better technology. So it was essentially a restart with a better CEO, and so we completed a Series A round of 15 million, and just last month we closed the Series B. I can't tell you yet how much that is. We're going to have a press release for that shortly. And then last year we started another company called BCD Biosystems. This is a bioactive carbohydrate company for adult nutrition. So it sort of matches the Evolve Biosystems. We've completed a seed round, just a small seed round to show the concept, but the people that we have investing in us are pretty well known in this space. So this is a paper that was published in 2011, where we looked at the serum of women with breast cancer and found that certain glycoproteins, so post-translational modifications of protein, were elevated in those with breast cancer. And then what we did was we took the cancer and we put it in mice, and we found that the same thing happened, that when you let the tumor grow, the mice would upregulate these compounds, and then when you cut the tumor out, it would go away. And so with several of those results, we filed a patent in 2006. Well, actually, this was 2011. We had earlier results, but this is sort of a culmination of that. So we filed the patent earlier in 2006, and it was actually granted 4 years later in 2010. And the patent is up here. It was actually mentioned in NPR, even in the news. There's a video of the news that talks about this discovery. So it was actually quite, we got a lot of good publicity from that. And so here's the sequence of events that happened. We filed a provisional patent in 2005. In 2006, we filed the full patent. We incorporated the company in Delaware. We won several awards. We won the People's Choice Award in UC Davis, and also in the Big Bang in UC Berkeley. We got a seed and fund of $120,000 from the friends and family. That's how you often start. We call it a friends and family round. And that's enough to just get you some, essentially, it's not enough to do anything, but it's just enough to establish a company. We formed an executive board. We had a CEO who was a recent MBA student. We partnered with a Korean company who gave us $150,000 in infusion just to collaborate with us. And we presented to venture funds in Silicon Valley, and I had to dissolve the company in 2015. And this is a picture that people show all the time. This is, it's called the Valley of Death. This is where research, this is where we were, and this is where grants were funding our research. And this is when VCs or venture capitalists start funding you. And so this is where it's called the Valley of Death, because this is where most ideas of companies die, and the point where research funding ends and I'm sorry, those are my dogs in the background. And this is where sort of corporate money starts. And so that's where we failed. In the US, you can get NIH funding called SBIR grants that allows you to bridge that. Another research that we did was on human milk that too sort of took off, and it became very popular, very well known. It was featured in Nature. It made the cover of Chemical and Engineering News. It even made the New York Times. It became the most read or the most emailed article in the New York Times. And the idea here was that there were certain components of milk that fed a certain bacteria. And these are my two co-founders. There were two others. And what we found, though, was that this bacteria was sort of going away in the United States and also in developed countries. And this bacteria, it does a lot of things, but one of the things that it does is it sort of makes the colon, it acidifies the colon so that it eliminates pathogenic bacteria and also antibiotic resistance bacteria. And so, this was an opportunity because the bacteria was disappearing. So what we wanted to do was commercialize the bacteria, right? And so the question then, when you come across something like this, is do you patent or not? So companies have two types of intellectual properties. They have patents and they have trade secrets, right? And so, so patenting is pretty important. But as a young scientist, I was sort of against patents. I thought I wanted to, I thought you wanted unhindered free flow of knowledge. I realized later on that if you have a patent, VCs will invest in your company, and if you don't have that patent, they may not. And so if you have a patent, there's a bigger chance of commercializing your invention than without a patent. So you definitely want the patent. So patents are the strongest forms of IP. They provide, unfortunately, a recipe that others may follow. And so if you don't want them to follow something, then you would put it in a trade secret. You don't have to tell anyone about it. However, if you want to get money, the first thing that venture capitalists will ask is there a patent? Now, on the other hand, I have started companies without patents, but it's always easier with a patent, right? A patent allows you to use it for 15 years. If you file a provisional patent, which is an intention to file a patent, then you get an additional year, right? So patents are pretty similar worldwide. I'll explain the US one because that's the one I'm most familiar with. And there are three types of patents. There's the utility patents, there's the design patents, and the plant patents. And the utility patents include both the composition of matter, which is a stronger one, or a way of doing things, for example, the way to manufacture and so on. However, regardless of your patent, they have to be useful and they have to be novel and non-obvious. And that means then if someone, or if you publish a paper already on your invention, then it's no longer novel or non-obvious, right? And so then we filed our patent. But a few years later, this happened. This is the famous Myriad case. And what this did was it says, if a product is naturally occurring, you can't patent it, okay? Because what happened was a lot of people were patenting genes and RNAs. And so what the patent examiner or the patent judgment decided was that that was just stifling ideas too much. And so now if it's naturally occurring, you can't patent it. But there are ways around that. And so what we did then is we couldn't patent the bacteria because that was naturally occurring. You can't patent the human milk oligosaccharides that was feeding the bacteria. However, the combination of the two is a patent, and that's what we did. And what we found was that there were enzymes to support that. We found enzymes in the bacteria that was actually breaking down these oligosaccharides. And so we filed 3 patents, actually much more than that. But anyway, these were the 3 basic ones. One was on the genome sequence of the bifido and how they were being used. The other was on the human milk oligosaccharides and how they promote the bacteria. And then we found later on that cow's milk does similar things. And so these were the basis for that company evolved. And so from our very basic invention of figuring out what were the structures of these human milk oligosaccharides to figuring out what they did and all the way to product. And now you can buy this thing and you see in hospitals in the US. So Kaiser Permanente is using them. The Bill and Melinda Gates Fund is doing a lot of clinical trials with them. And then different states like Oregon Health System is also using these things. So this happened this last October. What happened was that a company was infringing our patent. So this is you may know this company. It's Abbott, and they're the maker of Similac, and so they were creating a similar product to us. And so the company itself is suing them, but because the patent belongs to the UC themselves is suing Abbott. And so this is sort of an interesting situation, because as a company, if we were small, we could never go against Abbott. But the fact that the patent was a University of California patent, which is a huge, huge enterprise within its own right, now it's an even fight between the University of California and Abbott. And that is actually in the courts at the moment. So here's what happened. We founded Evolve Biosystems. So we filed multiple patents. We incorporated in Delaware. The founders round, we did it 2013. We formed an executive board. And this is where the big difference was between the previous company and this company. We hired a seasoned veteran of starting companies. This guy, David Kyle, was the past CEO of a company called Martech. And he was the CEO when they sold that company to DSM for $1.2 billion. So this guy, and this is from what I find now, this is the key. You got to have experienced talent. In any case, we had a seed round of $1 million. We went around Silicon Valley presenting this. We did a Series A round of 9 million with very well-known VC funds, did a bunch of more clinical trials. We did a Series B of 20 million, Series D of 40 million, and right now they're in the process of doing a Series D. These were some of our backers. And we're now in the process of really just hopefully that the company is not taking and everywhere. So I'm not going to talk about how the other companies I started, but it follows a very similar path. But what did I learn from the companies? Well, one is that good science is not enough. Patents do not need the other thing that I learned is that when you write a patent, it's not like writing a paper at all. You need a lot, it's much more harder to write a paper than to create a patent. Okay, so don't let that get in your way. You have to choose the right people to work with you. Startup are like marriages, and it's a difficult divorce. If people have to be let go. Be selective about the advice you take when you're first starting out. Everyone has an advice for you, and a lot of it is just wrong. So, but the best advice I can give you is to get an experienced CEO. Negotiate the technology transfer well, and this is even from UC Davis. They actually were not at the time very good at technology transfer. There's very few universities in the world that do this very well, and at the time UC Davis was not one of them, but we actually helped them learn. Also, as a founder, you have to let go of the technology. You may be something that you really love and something you really want to be involved in, but as an academic, you don't know. I don't know business very well, and so it's best to let it go and let the experts take over. And this is an opportunity for everyone. I think food and gut health is really a rising area. And so with that, I think that's all I have, but just to let you know what it's like to start a company, what you need to know, and I hope this helps you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlito. That was a very nice, short and sweet. I hope you become a unicorn this year. I don't know, with the COVID, maybe you'll have to wait a little bit, but I think it's on its way to become a vigilant valuation of over $1 billion. It's a unicorn for those people out there that are not used to venture capital language. But hopefully we will have our first PAASE member founder unicorn not too long from now, and hopefully there'll be more. So they always say lead with your best bet. So I led with Carlito. Unfortunately, we won't have any chance to do a Q&A right away. You can still post your questions on the chat, and Carlito can try to respond to it. but we will move on to our next speaker, in, and then we'll reserve the Q&A later after all the 5 companies have spoken and be able to have presented their different experiences.